RotoRob here with Sean Farrell, who is currently playing in the USHL with the Chicago Steel and was taken in the fourth round, 124th overall, by the Montreal Canadiens in this year's NHL Draft. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us today, Sean.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Firstly, tell me, I'd love to hear where you were when you heard you'd been drafted and what was your reaction?
I was out here in Chicago for the draft. My dad had come out with me because it's kind of like the week I got here and started to move in. So my dad and I watched it at the restaurant at the rink we were at. So we were just watching the TV on NHL Network waiting to see my name, and then it popped up, and it was a pretty cool moment and really great to be there with him.
Yeah, I'm sure. Obviously, he's been there along the entire journey, and it's a long, long road to get there, of course.
Yeah, definitely, I think.
Now, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, like, it was cool to have him there. I mean, obviously, I wish it could have been a little bit more normal and could have spent the time with, like, my whole family, my grandparents and cousins as well, but I was happy that I was able to be there with at least them.
That's cool. Now, obviously, you've spoken to the Canadiens since the draft. I'm curious what they've told you about their plans for you long term.
I mean, not much, honestly. I think for them, I think the focus for me is just making sure I get better every day.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I'm not going to play in the NHL this year, so I think over the next few years, it's important for me to improve a bunch of areas of my game and make sure that when it's time for me to turn pro, I'm someone that can make an impact for them.
Do they have a specific list of things they were hoping you worked on between now and then?
Not really anything specific. I think, I mean, I have things for myself that I definitely want to improve. So I've kind of been working on that. And then I think for me to get to the NHL eventually, I just gonna have to get a lot faster and stronger, like any other young player right now.
Okay. Do they give any indications when they want you to sign an ELC at all, or is it too early to talk about that?
Yeah, I think it's probably too early because I mean I'll be at Harvard for at least a couple years, and then whenever the Canadiens think that I may be ready to make the jump, I think I'd obviously want to do that and be able to go into their organization and try to help out and hopefully be someone that contributes for their team right away.
Okay. Now, I've seen you listed at 5'9", 174. Is that accurate, or has that changed at all?
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
Okay.
A little bit heavier now, just a few pounds, but yeah, it's pretty close.
Mm-hmm. I guess you're typically still considered an undersized forward, even though the game is changing a lot, and there's certainly plenty of players your size or smaller who are entering the NHL. But I guess you talked a little bit about a minute ago about getting stronger and faster. Any other challenges you think you'll need to overcome before turning pro?
Not really. I think that's the biggest thing. It's I think going up every level, it gets harder to beat defensemen and harder to like put yourself in areas on the ice to be able to produce and score goals and get to the net. So I think for me this year, like being in Chicago again is a great opportunity for me to work off the ice with our strength coach Bobby Lucas, who's great. Put some weight on and strength in the gym, and then also on the ice, just working on my speed and like being able to make tight turns and beat defensemen in the corners.
Can you give our listeners a scouting report of yourself? What kind of player are you?
Yeah. So I think I describe myself as a playmaker. First off, I think my biggest strength is my vision and my ability to find my teammates in places where they can succeed. I'd also like to say that I'm a 200-foot player. I think I can play all three forward positions and do a good job playing both ends of the rink, as well as playing like power play, penalty kill, wherever coach needs me to play.
I see. Okay. Now, I generally see that you were ranked heading into the draft as more or less a top 65 prospect. So I think you slipping down was a bit of a surprise. What kind of motivation does this offer you in terms of proving a lot of teams wrong there?
Yeah, I think it definitely adds a little bit of motivation for me. I think obviously going into the draft, I knew that anything could happen. So I kind of just had to wait it out that day and see where I'd end up. And obviously, I'm thankful to go to a great organization like the Canadiens. And I think in the future, obviously, I'm really motivated to prove that was a really good pick for them.
Okay, I'd like to ask you a little bit more about the Canadiens in a minute, but I'm curious, how big a factor do you think your size was in terms of you dropping in the draft? Do you think that was an issue at all?
I'm not sure. I mean, I think nowadays it's proven that smaller guys can play in the NHL and make a big impact. So it might have been. I can't really tell you for sure though.
I just was curious. Now you're a Massachusetts native, so I'm going to assume you grew up a Bruins fan. Is that correct?
Yeah, I did. I was a Bruins fan most of my life.
All right. So how do you feel about being drafted by one of their biggest rivals ever?
I mean, honestly, I think getting drafted by the Canadiens is incredible, especially like it being in an original six city and a place where obviously in Canada they love hockey there. So I think if I have the opportunity to play for the Canadiens later in my career, it'll be really special because I know that's probably one of the best arenas to play in and a great city to be in as well.
Yeah, hockey's pretty much a religion in Quebec. It's really intense. Now, I noticed you didn't make the cut for the USA WJC preliminary roster. How disappointed were you about that?
Yeah, it was pretty disappointing for me. I think I definitely could have helped out that team in some way. But I mean, I wish the best to those guys. A lot of them are some of my closest friends that I played with for a while at the NTDP, and a few from Chicago as well. So I hope they do well at the tournament.
Well, I mean, the United States is churning out so much talent now. It's the last 5 or 6 years. I mean, well, we saw it in 2019 with the amount of first-round picks just from the UNTDN, right? Like, that was insane. Yeah. You had a really good season with the Steel last year, but are off to an even better start so far this year. What's been the difference so far?
I mean, I think, honestly, just kind of taking how I played last year and bringing it into this year. I think being one of the older guys on the team and a leader on the team, it's important for me to like bring it every night and be someone that is relied on to produce and score goals. So I think for me, like nothing really changed from last year to this year in terms of my mindset. Just playing with a lot of good players. So I think we're racking up some points and starting to get some wins as well, which is great.
I was reading a scouting report that suggested compared you to Alex DeBrincat. Do you think that's a fair comparison?
Yeah, I think so a little bit.
Or maybe a better question is, who do you think you're most similar to?
Yeah. So I think for me, I like to watch a bunch of guys and take some stuff out of their games. I think DeBrincat's a little bit more of a scorer and shooter than I am. I think some guys I've liked to watch is like Tyler Johnson in Tampa Bay, and Johnny Gaudreau. I think Tyler Johnson is someone that kind of plays like a 200-foot game and really plays wherever they wanted him in Tampa's lineup. And then Gaudreau obviously is another smaller guy, and I just like to watch how crafty he is, how good he is on the rush, and like his ability to make defenders miss and like use his skill to his advantage.
Let me ask you, Sean, do you play fantasy sports at all?
Yeah, I got a couple fantasy football teams going right now.
Just fantasy football or any other sports?
Yeah, just football. I've never really gotten into the other ones. The other ones are a bit too confusing and hard to manage, like weekly.
Are you any good at fantasy football?
Um, I'm struggling this year, but in the past I've won my league that I've had with my buddies at home a few times. But it's not looking great this year.
Well, this year's kind of a write-off with all the COVID and
Yeah, I
people
know.
missing,
So
and
many injuries.
it's. I mean, we saw what happened with Denver this week. Like, really, no quarterback. Give me a break. Now, let me ask you this: if you're in a keeper league, a fantasy football keeper league, who would be your top pick right now? Like, you had the number one overall pick.
Um, I think I go with like maybe Derrick Henry.
Hmm.
He seems to have a touchdown and like 100 yards every week right now.
Yeah,
And he's just such a beast. So I think I'd go with him right now.
he's definitely a beast, showing no signs of slowing down. That's for sure.
Yeah.
When you were growing up, like you mentioned Gaudreau and you mentioned Tyler Johnson, but who did you model your game after when you were a kid?
I think like growing up, like primarily watching the Bruins. I always like to watch like Bergeron and Marchand play together. I think there's so much to take out of both their games, like the way they both play 200 feet and are both like really good penalty kill, power play. They really just did everything for the Bruins. And on top of that, like offensively, they play so well together and make a bunch of really smart plays. And then like recently adding Pasternak to that line, I think like watching them, you take a lot from their game and the way they're able to play together as a line.
Are you as nasty as Marchand?
No, not quite.
That's
I don't do as many little dirty things as he's done.
yeah. He's one of those players you love him when he's on your team, but if he's not,
Yeah.
you're probably not a fan. Um, Obviously, you still have tons of your career ahead of you, but so far to date, what would you say is the proudest accomplishment of your career, Sean?
I think for me it's probably winning like the U17 World Challenge. I think that was pretty special for me. It was like my first time representing the U.S. So that was pretty cool to win that tournament, especially because we played Canada in Canada in the gold medal game, and we ended up beating them. So that was a really cool experience.
Cool. And what about your biggest disappointment so far?
Probably like the season being canceled last year.
Yeah.
I think like we had such a great team in Chicago, and obviously we were able to win the Anderson Cup, which is the regular season trophy, and we really wanted to bring home a Clark Cup for the postseason, and we were just starting to play our best hockey at the end of the year, so it would have been awesome to finish that out with that group of guys, and it just ended so abruptly, which is pretty sad.
Yeah, absolutely. Thinking back, who's the best teammate you ever had? And by best teammate, I mean the guy who would go through the brick wall for you. Like as a leader, as a like just get on my back, everybody, kind of follow me.
Yeah, I think I'd say it was John Spatz, who was one of our captains here in Chicago last year. He's at UConn now. And that guy, he gave 110% every practice, every game. Like he'd block a puck with his face in order for us to win a game, and was a great leader for us all year.
How about the most talented player you ever played with? Now, I'm going to assume it was someone on the 2019 U.S. NTDB under-18 team that we talked about earlier, because there were a hell of a lot of good players, but maybe you played with somebody more talented?
I don't know. I mean, it'd probably have to be Jack Hughes when I was at the NTDP. I think, like, it's pretty cool to, like, practice with him every day and see, like, what he can do with the puck, and the way he skates is pretty special. Like, you see it in the NHL. Like, the way he can carve through defensemen is really crazy and something that not many other people in the world can do.
Who would you say is the toughest opponent you ever faced? That player is like, oh, I've got to play this team. That means I got to match up against this guy. It's such a pain in the ass.
I'm not sure, honestly. Like, I feel like for me, there's never really like a tough team to play against per se or player. I think in the USHL, I guess the biggest battle is like taking a long bus ride and getting off. I think that's probably the most annoying thing to kind of go against.
So there's no one
like,
player over the years you kind of had a rivalry with, and just
no, not really.
Oh, okay.
I think it was more just like, I think in the USHL, like we play like Muskegon, Youngstown, like so many times over the course of the year, where like we just had pretty intense matchups with those teams.
We mentioned a couple players earlier, but is there a winger in the game today that sort of most reminds you of yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think I definitely like watching Goudreau and like Marchand as well. And then I think Tyler Johnson, as I mentioned earlier, he plays a little bit of center and wing. But I think if I'm trying to watch a player and really take a bunch out of its game, it's probably Goudreau, because he's so crafty and makes so many plays for his team. And I think as a playmaker, I think it's good for me to watch him and the way he's able to find his teammates and create a lot of offense.
All right, cool. I'm going to put you on the spot here and ask you who's going to win the Stanley Cup next season?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like I should say Montreal, but I think Tampa's going to be really good again. So I'll just say, like, I think a team from the East is going to win it again. I think the East is so stacked recently. So
Montreal looked pretty damn good in the bubble, and they are collecting a hell of a lot of young talent on the team, yourself included. They've got a lot of good prospects, so they're definitely on the road back to being a contender. So I'm sure you'll get to enjoy that in a few years.
I think.
What are your goals for this season, and then ultimately long term?
I think for me this season, it's just to like improve every day and get to where I want to be as like a skater and get a little bit stronger. And then I think for me, obviously as our team, like we really want to win the Anderson Cup again, and we want to win the Clark Cup. I think we kind of got robbed of that last year with everything being shut down, and it's definitely something that we're really motivated to do this season. And then I think in the future for me, after my year here with the Steel, I want to be a really good college player for Harvard and hopefully help them win some ECAC titles, Beanpot titles, and maybe a national championship too. And then I think after that, my goal would be to play in the NHL, whenever that may be. I think my goal is to get there and stick there for a good amount of time.
All right. Well, thanks so much for your time today, Sean, and best of luck to you in the future.
Yeah, thanks for having me.